I didn't think I'd have a story to share on here so recently. Now, for a little context, we have a really bad issue with our neighbors. Not bad towards us, but they're drug dealers. Could do worse stuff, but IDK, I only know about the drugs because the house owner's little sister who was in high school with me told me. She was removed from their custody, and they actually got the SWAT team called on them last year. I have met the owner's girlfriend wife. I'm not sure what she was to him, but I know she had 2 young kids, probably 7 when I met them. EDK, what happened to them? Now that the context is set up, the story, I was at home during winter holiday break from college. My mom and I found out really late that the Netflix show Lucifer just aired its final season. We love the show and watch it together. My dad was at work, and he usually works from 5 p.m. to 4 a.m. My mom and I decided to binge the second half of the season this night. We meant to watch like 2 episodes, but we all know that you never really stop at 2. Anyways, so we're up at 2 a.m. in the morning, watching one of the last episodes. Throughout the night until this point, starting at, I believe, 8 p.m., we heard our neighbors yelling outside. I told my mom to ignore it because it's not our business. It continued on and off for the rest of the night until around 1:30 when we hear them arguing on our porch. My mom and I just kind of look at each other because why would they bring their argument onto our porch? Like there's a fence between us, so that means they had to purposely go around the fence to get to our porch. So they argue for another 30 minutes, then everything goes quiet. We figured they'd left, only for someone to start kicking at our door and trying the handle. It was locked gladly, but my mom and I were on our feet. My mom tossed me her phone and told me to call 911 while she made sure our side door was locked. We only have a front and side door. And an extra crappy thing, only my mom's room has a lock on the door. So I call, telling the operator someone's trying to get in. My mom starts talking to the operator, explaining what's going on. Now, I have a bad habit of not having my phone on me around my parents. I'm a total bookworm, have been since I was a kid. And phones usually distract me from reading or drawing as I'm an art student, so I usually have it up in my room charging. So I ask my mom if I need to call my dad. She nods, and now I need to go upstairs to get my phone. I'm scared to turn on the lights, so I crawl upstairs in the dark to get my phone. I call my dad and try to look outside from my windows. I couldn't see anything, but I explain the situation to my dad. He's rightfully freaked out and says he'll come home. My dad works 20 minutes away, so I was still scared. A lot can happen in 20 minutes. So I stupidly hang up in the panic and go downstairs to my mom's room. The person is now at the front door kicking more aggressively as my mom and I hide in her room. I call my dad again, telling him I don't want to die and begging him to be on the phone with me. He agrees as we hear the banging stop. The operator says police will be over in a few minutes, and my mom looks out the window. I yelled at her, explaining that if the person trying to get in saw that, they'd know where we were. As I'm explaining this, we get confirmation that the police are there. I tell my dad, the operator confirms they found someone at our door and it was safe to come outside, so my mom does. I peek my head outside and see the neighbor's girlfriend wife talking to police. She explained that she needed help and that's why she tried to break in. I'm not sure if I believe that. Why would she try both doorknobs? Regardless, the police ended up taking her down to the station and my dad stayed home that weekend. So, if you really needed help, lady, I hope the police managed to help you, but please, let's not meet again. Let's not meet. Hi guys, this is a real story that has absolutely traumatized me and my boyfriend. 2 years ago, I moved to the UK for university, as I always wanted to go there and get away from my parents as the situation at home was beginning to become too toxic for me. In first year at uni, I moved into a student accommodation and met some really great people. It was a good year without meeting my boyfriend, who I'm still with, and just enjoying my time away from my family and discovering what independence really meant. Anyhow, as second year came by, I decided with some friends to move into a house rented by student accommodations, but at least we had our own house and weren't restricted as much with noise and parties as living in a small shared flat like in first year. Note: I had a ground floor room, and my window gave into a very small backyard, in which I would go smoke every day as I am a smoker, and in which there would be a very thin wooden door giving into the other side of the street, where you would put your bins and broken chairs, blah blah. The door could only be closed and locked from inside the backyard, but since it was an old door, we had to attach some strings to keep it closed for good. I had neighbors on each side of the house, so we were surrounded by families and some other student accommodations. The neighbors on the right of us were 5 boys, who looked way over the age of being in university. They were strange, so to say. I met one of them outside of our house one day because of a police intervention due to one of his flatmates attacking him, and the others with a kitchen knife and burning their kitchen down. I heard some screams, and so I went outside with my flatmates and saw one of them being covered in blood and cuts everywhere on his arm and a wound on his head inflicted by a kitchen knife. Me and my flatmates didn't know what to do, so we offered him our help to clean himself and gave him an old t-shirt to change out of his bloody clothes. We then saw the guy who hurt these flatmates being escorted out by the police and into a van and driven off to be arrested. I don't know anything more about the story. The police didn't really tell us anything else. Anyway, the guy who we helped was quite weird. He said a lot of BS and kept trying to grab me and flirting with me. And we noticed when helping him he smoked quite a lot of marijuana, but just didn't really care at the moment, as we just wanted to make sure he was okay as we didn't know him. Then after some time had passed, I would go to uni and come back home and see him quite often in the street, and just never said a word to him again. But one day, he came up to me in the street while I went to the corner shop and started talking to me weirdly, and I didn't feel comfortable at all with that for some reason, so I just didn't respond to him. He then just said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll just wait in front of your house then, and we can talk further." No need to say I was creeped out and just thought he was joking, so I bought my drink at the shop and headed back to my street, and as I turned into the street where my house was, I saw him with his flatmate sitting on my doorstep and waiting for me. So I panicked and went back next to the corner shop and called my only guy flatmate to ask him to open the door and tell the guys to go away. But obviously he wasn't home and no one else was either. So I literally just waited it out until they left about 1 hour later and then sprinted back home and locked the front door. Note, my front door had a glass panel on it where you would be able to kind of make out who was standing in front of it. After this already pretty scary encounter, I just tried to avoid the guy and mostly succeeded for a while. But then one day, as I went smoking in the backyard, I noticed that the wooden door, which is always closed, was open, and the strings that we put there to keep it closed were cut off. For whatever reason, I didn't think anything of it, and just closed the door again and put a new string on it, thinking it was one of my flatmates who took the bins out and just didn't tie it back. The weird neighbors would very often scream and yell and fight in their house, and it would wake me and my flatmates up in the middle of the night, but we kinda got used to it after a while. But one evening, my boyfriend slept over like he usually did, and he, who usually never ever wakes up because of a noise, woke up in the middle of the night because of a bang and some whispering. I was sound asleep, so he very silently woke me up, and we both just waited in the dark and listened for any other noises. Suddenly, we heard the wooden door just bang, just shot open, and some footsteps next to my window. I always had my window open because it would get really warm inside, so we both just froze. And then we heard the door leading to the backyard get shaken softly, as if they were trying to get inside. And then they stopped. Luckily, we had the curtains closed so they couldn't see us, but we were ready to get dressed and get the F out of the room and lock them in if they came in from the window. Then we just heard my window move and get more open, and one of the guys saying something in a different language that we didn't understand and started to hear them trying to get in. My boyfriend and I just shot up out of the bed, took my phone and put clothes on and ran out of the room and out of the house, so I then called my flatmates and told them to lock themselves in their rooms, and then the police, who luckily came in less than 5 minutes as the headquarters were a couple of streets down from us. I don't remember anything after the police came. I think me and my boyfriend were in shock. They ended up catching one guy, the other fled, and was later found a few streets up smoking weed. The police told us they went inside of their house and found a lot of meth and heroin, and that they were just carrying a massive kitchen knife with them. I was so confused as I've never done anything to offend or do anything wrong to my neighbors, so the idea of them breaking in with God knows what intentions with a kitchen knife terrorized me and my boyfriend. The 2 guys ended up being arrested, and one of them was put in prison for 2 years for carrying a weapon with intention to harm. I never heard anything else from the police, and I moved back home a few months later, as I was so scared and it tormented me for months on end, not knowing what would have happened if my boyfriend didn't wake up. I'm now still coping with it, and finding it really tough to get over it, of always asking myself what if and what would have happened if. I now very often wake up because of the slightest noise and get horrible nightmares because of it. But hey, at least I'm still with my boyfriend, and we often talk about it, and it helps a lot. When I was 25, there was a short time I was staying at my aunt's. It was her, my two cousins, and I. She lives in a nice apartment complex, and her unit is on the lower level. Her living room has a lot of windows that she keeps open for fresh air and for her cats to people watch. Her unit happens to be on the corner near a grassy courtyard path. When I had first moved in, I noticed a man who gave me an off vibe. My cousins and aunt said he lived upstairs and 2 units over, recovering from hard drugs that permanently messed him up. His parents paid for him to stay there as they didn't want him with them. They also said, other than hearing him mumble and say weird things, no one had ever had an issue. My aunt works nights and leaves at 3 a.m. My younger cousin works nights and leaves at 2 a.m. That usually left my same-aged cousin and I the only 2 there until we leave for work around 8. For context, it is a very open living room to dining room plan. My aunt always has people staying over, so she has a second couch in the dining room in place of a table. This was where I slept. She stayed on the one in the living room. My aunt has also never been one to lock her doors. Until this incident. One night, I'm on my phone trying to sleep at about 1 a.m. and hear a man yelling. He's yelling, "Don't shoot," and banging on the door to the right of ours. 2 male college students live there and just told him he had the wrong apartment and to leave. He says sorry and walks off. I am looking through the kitchen window, which is in direct line of sight from my couch bed, and it's the weird neighbor who sees me and grins. He then walks back to his home. I was unsettled, but not enough to wake anyone else up over it. Told my family nonchalantly the next day in a lol that was weird way. My cousin and I watch a movie and head off to bed. I have a very hard time staying asleep, but I woke up this time to the feeling of someone watching me. I check my phone and it's around 3:30 a.m. So I know it's not my aunt or cousin. I sit up and figure I'll go watch TV on my aunt's couch since she was gone already. The feeling gets stronger as I am in the living room. Then I see the shadow of a person standing still in the grass courtyard looking in. I froze. I immediately go back to my couch to get my phone. As I do, the person is gone. I am now trying to calm myself down and think of waking my cousin up when I hear the creepy man's voice. He is now at the kitchen window, which looks out directly in front of her front door. I drop to the floor out of his line of sight and start frantically trying to call my cousin. The man is now saying things at the window front door like, "I'm not going to hurt you and I'm unarmed," over and over again. His face is up against the window. Then he starts talking about wanting to pet the cats he saw through the window. I can't get a hold of my cousin. It's been 20 minutes of this. At this point, in this completely clown shit situation, I didn't have many options. I could jump up and run for a knife, but I'd need to go to the kitchen. I could try to respond and ask him to leave, but I've learned when you underestimate crazy, you lose every time. I now hear him knocking and knocking while repeating his nonsense. I'm doing that ridiculous-looking army crawl snake slither across the floor down the hall now. I see the door handle start to turn. I'm about to jump up when my cousin bursts out of his room directly across from the front door. Now he's not the biggest guy, but boy was he intimidatingly made at the circus show taking place at his front door. He starts yelling at the guy that he needs to get the fuck off of his porch and that he's calling the cops. The man tries to say, "I'm unarmed. I'm not gonna hurt you, don't be afraid." My cousin goes off and yells, "That's fucking dandy. It's 4 a.m. You need to leave or I'll call the cops. WTF is wrong with you?" So the guy backs up with his hands in the air and leaves. Needless to say, we didn't go back to sleep. My aunt was called, who called the apartment manager. The next day when I came home from work, his parents were there packing moving boxes in a truck from his place. Maybe he was trying to get me to open the door by seeming friendly. Maybe he had a bad trip and really wanted to pet a cat to feel better. We will never know. Thank you for watching True Scary Stories from Reddit. Comment below and tell us which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed today's video, please like it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more by hitting the bell icon to get notified when new videos go live. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.